The forest had never felt so hostile. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves sent Thyra's heart hammering against her ribs as she pressed deeper into the borderlands between pack territories. The scent of pine and damp earth filled her lungs, but even the familiar comfort of the woods couldn't ease the trembling in her hands. 3 days. It had been 3 days since they'd laid Gareth's body in the ground, and only hours since the pack had made their position clear. The mate of a traitor has no place among us. Thyra's fingers instinctively moved to her stomach, still flat beneath the rough fabric of her traveling cloak. No one could see the life growing there yet, but she knew. She'd known the moment she woke that morning, her wolf whimpering with a protective instinct that transcended grief. The healer's confirmation had merely solidified what her body had already told her. She was carrying Gareth's child, the child of a disgraced Alpha who died attacking the Alpha King's territory in a mad bid for power. The irony burned like acid in her throat. Gareth had never told her his plans, had never shared his desperate schemes to reclaim the honor his father had lost. Their mating had been arranged, political, devoid of the passionate bond the stories promised. She'd been dutiful, respectful, and ultimately ignorant of the darkness festering in her mate's heart. Now she would pay for his sins. "You cannot stay here." The beta's words still echoed in her mind, cold and final. "The pack cannot afford to harbor the widow of a traitor. The Alpha King will see it as continued defiance." She'd begged. The shame of it still colored her cheeks hot even now. Alone in the gathering twilight, she'd knelt before the council, pleaded for mercy, for a chance to prove her loyalty. But their eyes had been hard as stone, their judgment absolute. "Leave before dawn, or we'll drag you to the border ourselves." So she'd fled, taking nothing but the clothes she wore and a small pouch of herbs the healer had pressed into her hands with sympathetic eyes. Not enough to sustain her, barely enough to last a week. The sun was sinking now, painting the sky in shades of amber and blood. Thyra's feet ached, her body already protesting the endless walking. She needed to rest, needed to find water and shelter before full dark. The neutral territories were dangerous. Rogues and outcasts prowled these lands, answering to no pack law, bound by no code of honor. A perfect place for a traitor's widow to disappear. The thought sent ice through her veins. She couldn't think like that. Wouldn't. This child deserved a chance at life, deserved better than a mother who gave up before the fight even began. Thyra had been weak in her mating, passive and obedient. But motherhood demanded strength. She would find it. Somehow. The trees grew denser as she walked, their branches forming a canopy that blocked out the dying light. Shadows pooled between the trunks, deep and impenetrable. Thyra's wolf stirred uneasily, senses heightened, detecting something her human nose couldn't quite capture. Smoke. Old smoke. And something else. Magic. She hesitated, every instinct screaming to turn back. But where would she go? Behind her lay only rejection and death. Forward was the unknown, terrifying but alive with possibility. Thyra pushed through a curtain of hanging moss and stumbled into a small clearing. A structure stood at its center, too deliberate to be natural, too ancient to be recent. Stones arranged in a circle, worn smooth by countless years, and at their center, a fire that shouldn't exist burned with silver flames. "You're late, child." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, feminine and ancient as the mountains themselves. "I've been waiting." Thyra spun, heart in her throat, and saw her. An old woman sat on one of the stones, her hair a river of white that seemed to glow in the strange firelight. Her eyes were colorless, milky with age, yet Thyra felt certain those eyes saw everything. "Who are you?" Thyra's voice came out rough, brittle with exhaustion. "A keeper of old truths, a reader of bloodlines." The woman tilted her head, a gesture that reminded Thyra of a bird studying prey. And you are Thyra Ashenblade, widow of Gareth Ironmaw, carrier of a child who will reshape the world. The words hit like physical blows. How do you know? The elder's laugh was dry as autumn leaves. Child, I knew before you were born, before your mother drew breath. Some fates are written in starlight and blood, and yours burns brighter than most. She gestured to the stone beside her. Sit. We have little time and much to discuss. Thyra's legs trembled with the need to obey, though her mind rebelled. She'd heard stories of the ancient ones, wolves who'd lived so long they existed half in the spirit world, their powers grown strange and unpredictable, dangerous to trust, dangerous to refuse. She sat. The child in your womb carries a rare bloodline, the elder said without preamble. Gareth's line descends from the first pack, from wolves who could walk in both forms under any moon. Your line. Her colorless eyes fixed on Thyra with unsettling intensity. Your grandmother was touched by the moon goddess herself, a blessing that skipped your mother but lives in you, dormant, waiting. I don't understand. Thyra pressed her hand to her stomach, protective. What does this mean for my baby? It means your child will either unite the wolf kingdoms or shatter them beyond repair. The elder's voice carried the weight of prophecy, each word resonating through Thyra's bones. It means she is precious beyond measure and hunted before she's even born. Gareth's enemies will seek to end the bloodline. His former allies will seek to control it, and the Alpha King. She paused, something almost like amusement flickering across her ancient features. The Alpha King will surprise you most of all. The Alpha King killed Gareth. Thyra's voice hardened. Why would he care about his child? Because fate has woven your threads together in ways neither of you can imagine. Because the moon goddess has plans that transcend one alpha's foolish ambition. The elder reached out, her gnarled hand covering Thyra's, where it rested on her stomach. The touch sent warmth flooding through her, easing aches she'd been carrying for days. You must reach his territory before the next full moon. That is your task. That is your test. He'll kill me. The words tasted like ash. I'm the widow of his enemy. He'll surprise you, the elder repeated, cryptic and infuriating. Trust what you feel, not what you fear. Trust the bond when it calls. Trust yourself most of all. She pulled her hand back and the warmth fled with it, leaving Thyra cold and confused. What bond? I don't... You will. The elder stood, moving with surprising grace for one so aged. The next full moon, Thyra Ashenblade. Reach the mountain kingdom before then, or all will be lost. Your daughter's fate hangs in the balance. Wait! Thyra surged to her feet, desperate for clarity. How do I get there? How do I... But the elder was fading, becoming translucent as morning mist. Follow the northern star. Trust your wolf. And remember, the greatest strength is not in never falling, but in rising when all seems lost. Then she was gone, and the silver fire with her. The clearing plunged into darkness, leaving Thyra alone with the pounding of her heart and the weight of prophecy settling on her shoulders like a mantle of lead. She stood there for a long moment, trying to process everything, trying to understand. A rare bloodline, a child who could unite or destroy kingdoms. The Alpha King, who'd killed her mate, somehow central to her daughter's fate. It was madness. But the elder's words had carried the ring of truth, and the warmth of her touch still lingered in Thyra's bones. More than that, the mention of her daughter, specifically her daughter, had felt right in a way Thyra couldn't explain. She looked up through the break in the trees, found the northern star just beginning to shine in the darkening sky. The mountain kingdom lay north, through dangerous territory, across lands claimed by alphas who'd allied with Gareth or been targeted by him. She was weak, pregnant, alone. Impossible odds. Thyra's hand pressed against her stomach again, feeling nothing yet but knowing everything was there. A spark of life, a future, hope wrapped in blood and prophecy. "I'll get us there," she whispered to the child who couldn't hear her yet. "I promise. Whatever it takes." Her wolf stirred in agreement, lending strength to her exhausted limbs. Thyra took a breath, squared her shoulders, and began walking north. The journey blurred into an endless nightmare of hunger, fear, and determination. Days passed, measured by the growing ache in her body and the waning crescent of the moon. Thyra avoided roads and settlements, keeping to the forest, living on stream water and what few edible plants she recognized. Her pregnancy made itself known in waves of nausea and bone-deep exhaustion, but she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. The full moon was coming. She crossed from neutral territory into lands claimed by the Mountain Kingdom on the 8th day. The difference was immediate. The forests here were patrolled, marked, maintained. Signs of wolf presence were everywhere, from territorial markers to the worn paths of regular runs. Thyra's heart hammered with equal parts terror and desperate hope as she pressed deeper into Alpha King Aiden's domain. She just had to reach the castle, just had to throw herself on his mercy and pray the elder's prophecy held truth. But her body had other plans. The world tilted without warning, gray spots blooming across her vision. Thyra's legs buckled, strength fleeing like water through her fingers. She hit the ground hard, tasting copper and earth, her last conscious thought a prayer to the moon goddess. "Please, please let someone find me. Please let my daughter live." Then darkness swallowed her whole, and Thyra knew nothing more. The voices reached her first, filtering through layers of unconsciousness like light through deep water. "A woman, collapsed at the border. Could be a trap. Pregnant, sir. She needs—" Thyra struggled toward consciousness, her wolf whimpering with distress. Danger. She was in danger, had to wake up, had to protect. "Easy." The word came wrapped in power, a voice that commanded instant obedience. "You're safe. Open your eyes." She obeyed before she could think better of it, her lids fluttering open to reveal a stone ceiling, torchlight, and faces swimming in and out of focus. Guards, she realized dimly. Wolves in human form, armed and wary. And him. Thyra's breath caught as her gaze locked with eyes of molten amber, fierce and intelligent and utterly overwhelming. He stood above her, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair shot through with silver at the temples, and a face carved from granite and strength. Power radiated from him like heat from a forge, the unmistakable presence of an alpha in his prime. Alpha King Aiden, the wolf who'd killed her mate. But that wasn't what stole her breath and set her heart racing with something that definitely wasn't fear. The moment their eyes met, something snapped into place inside her chest. A pull, primal and undeniable, that sang through her blood and made her wolf surge forward with desperate recognition. The scent of him flooded her senses, pine and snow and something uniquely him, that made her want to lean closer, even as her mind screamed warnings. "Mate." Her wolf's voice was certain, joyous, absolute. Mate. No. That was impossible. She'd already had a mate, and he was dead. The bond didn't work like that, didn't just— But Aiden's expression had shifted, amber eyes widening with shock, nostrils flaring as he scented her in return. His massive frame went rigid, muscles coiling with sudden tension, and Thyra watched understanding dawn across his features with the devastating force of an avalanche. He felt it too, the bond, the impossible, inexplicable, undeniable pull of true mates recognizing each other. "Who are you?" His voice came out rough, strained with the effort of maintaining control. "What pack do you belong to?" Thyra's mouth went dry. This was the moment. The moment where she revealed herself as the widow of his enemy and watched whatever strange mercy the moon goddess had granted turned to ash. "Thyra," she managed, her voice barely a whisper. "Thyra Ashenblade. I'm. I was." The words stuck in her throat, thick with shame and fear. She was Gareth Ironmaw's mate, one of the guards supplied, his tone hard with suspicion. "The traitor who attacked our eastern border last month." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Thyra watched Aiden's face close off, warmth fleeing behind walls of ice and authority. But underneath, she could still feel it, the bond, pulling tight, demanding acknowledgement. "Leave us." Aiden's command brooked no argument. The guards hesitated only a moment before filing out, though she heard them take up positions just outside the door. Not trust, then. Just the illusion of privacy. Aiden waited until the door closed before speaking again, his voice carefully controlled. "You're carrying his child." It wasn't a question, but Thyra nodded anyway, hand moving protectively to her stomach. "I didn't know about his plans. I swear to you, I had no knowledge of—" "Why are you here?" He cut through her desperate explanation with surgical precision. "Why come to my territory? Why not stay with your pack? They cast me out." The admission burned with humiliation, called me a traitor's mate, said they couldn't afford to harbor me. Something flickered in Aiden's expression, anger, perhaps, or contempt for a pack that would abandon a pregnant female. "So you came to me, to the alpha who killed your mate. I came because I had nowhere else to go." Thyra met his eyes, refusing to look away, despite every instinct screaming that she was challenging a predator far beyond her ability to fight. "And because an elder in the borderlands told me I had to reach your territory before the full moon, or my daughter would be lost, your daughter." His gaze dropped to her stomach, and she felt the weight of his stare like a physical touch. "What makes this child so special that prophecies speak of her? She carries a rare bloodline." The words felt surreal in her mouth, borrowed from the elder's cryptic warnings. "One that will either unite or destroy the wolf kingdoms." Aiden was quiet for a long moment, his face unreadable. Then, slowly, deliberately, he moved closer. Thyra's breath quickened as he knelt beside where she lay on the simple cot, bringing those amber eyes level with hers. The mate bond pulled tighter, singing through her veins with warmth and want, and a recognition that terrified her. "I should send you away," he said quietly, and she heard the truth of it in his voice. "My council will demand it. Your presence here is a political liability. Your mate tried to kill my wolves, tried to steal my territory." "I know." Thyra's voice broke on the words. "I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But please," her hand pressed against her stomach, protective and desperate, "please don't punish her for his crimes. She deserves a chance to live." Something shifted in Aiden's expression, the ice cracking just enough to let through a glimpse of the man beneath the king. His gaze dropped to where her hand rested, and she watched him wage some internal war, jaw clenching with the effort. "The bond," he said finally, barely above a whisper. "You feel it." Not a question, but Thyra answered anyway. "Yes, I lost my mate 5 years ago." The confession came rough, painful. "I never thought. I was told true mates only came once. So was I." Thyra's heart ached with the impossibility of it all. "But I feel it. The pull, the recognition. This is madness." But even as he said it, his hand moved, hovering near hers where it rested on her stomach. Not quite touching, but close enough that she could feel the heat of him. "You're carrying another's child. You're the widow of my enemy. There is no scenario where this works." "I know." She blinked back tears, exhaustion and pregnancy hormones and grief all crashing together. "I'm not asking for anything except sanctuary. A place for my daughter to be born safely. After that, I'll go wherever you want. Just please, please let her live." Aiden's hand finally made contact, settling over hers with devastating gentleness. The bond flared at the touch, warmth flooding through her so intensely she gasped. His eyes widened, his sharp intake of breath confirming he felt it too. The rightness of the connection, the way their wolves sang in harmony despite every logical reason they shouldn't. "I'll grant you sanctuary," he said, his voice rough with emotion he was clearly fighting to contain. "You'll have quarters in the castle, protection, everything you need." His jaw clenched. "But understand this. I don't know what this bond means, or what the moon goddess intends. I don't know if I can be what you need, or if you can be what my kingdom requires. All I know is that I can't send you away, can't watch you die when everything in me screams that you're mine to protect." Relief hit her so hard she sobbed, unable to hold it back. "Thank you. Thank you, Don't thank me yet." But his hand stayed on hers, steady and warm. "This will be complicated, dangerous. My council will fight this. The other packs will see it as weakness or worse. I don't care." And she realized, with the clarity that came from having nothing left to lose, that it was true. As long as she's safe, nothing else matters. Aiden studied her for another long moment, then slowly nodded. He stood, his hands sliding away from hers, and Thyra immediately felt the loss like cold water on bare skin. "Rest now," he commanded, slipping back into the voice of a king rather than a potential mate. "We'll discuss the details tomorrow. For tonight, you're safe." He moved toward the door, then paused, looking back at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "What's her name?" "Your daughter. I don't—" Thyra hesitated, then heard herself say, "Alara. If she's a girl, it means starlight." Something softened in Aiden's features, just for a heartbeat. "Alara," he repeated, tasting the name. "It's beautiful." Then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a soft click that echoed like thunder in the sudden silence. Thyra lay there, hands still pressed to her stomach, mind reeling with everything that had just happened. The Alpha King was her mate, her true mate, the impossible, the unthinkable, the bond that sang through her blood with a certainty that transcended logic or politics or the complicated web of their histories, and he'd granted her sanctuary. Thyra closed her eyes, exhaustion finally claiming her now that the desperate race for survival had ended. The last thing she thought before sleep dragged her under was that the Elder had been right. The Alpha King had surprised her after all. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm that felt both comforting and dangerous. Thyra's quarters in the east wing of the castle were far more luxurious than anything she'd known in her former pack. A spacious bedroom with windows overlooking the mountain peaks, a private sitting area with a fireplace that was always somehow perfectly lit when she needed it, and thick rugs that cushioned her increasingly tender feet. The servants treated her with cautious courtesy, never quite warm but never cruel, as if they hadn't decided yet what to make of the pregnant widow in their midst. She tried to keep to herself, tried to be invisible, grateful, unremarkable. Every instinct screamed that she was a burden, an inconvenience, a political problem wrapped in the inconvenient packaging of a mate bond neither she nor Aiden had asked for. The safest thing, the smartest thing, was to stay out of sight until Alara was born, and she could figure out what came next. But Aiden made that impossible. He appeared at her door 3 days after granting her sanctuary, carrying a stack of leather-bound books that looked ancient and precious. "I thought you might be bored," he'd said, his tone carefully casual, as if kings regularly delivered reading material to their guests personally. The healer mentioned you should rest as much as possible. Thyra had accepted them with trembling hands, hyper-aware of how close he stood, how the mate bond hummed between them like a plucked string. "Thank you. You didn't have to. I wanted to." His amber eyes had held hers for a moment too long, making her breath catch before he turned and left without another word. The books were histories of the Mountain Kingdom, tales of the First Pack, and, tucked in the middle where he'd clearly meant her to find it, a slim volume of poems about the moon goddess and her blessings. Thyra had pressed it to her chest and cried, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of it, the way he'd somehow known exactly what she needed. He came back 2 days later with a plate of honey cakes, still warm from the kitchens. The cook makes these for special occasions, he'd explained, setting them on her table. They're supposed to help with nausea. They did. But more than that, they tasted like safety, like someone caring enough to notice she'd barely eaten breakfast. Then it was a shawl, soft as clouds, in a deep blue that brought out the silver in her eyes. The mountain nights get cold, he'd said, draping it over her shoulders with hands that lingered just a heartbeat too long. Each visit was brief, professional, carefully controlled. But each visit also chipped away at the walls Thyra was trying to build around her heart. She found herself listening for his footsteps in the corridor, her pulse quickening when she caught his scent on the air. Their conversations grew longer, evolving from polite pleasantries to genuine exchanges. "Did you always want to be an alpha?" she'd asked one afternoon when he'd stopped by to check if her fireplace was drawing properly. An excuse so transparent it made her want to laugh and cry at the same time. Aiden had paused, his expression thoughtful. "No. I wanted to be a scholar, actually, spend my days in libraries, studying the old ways." His smile had been rueful. "But my father died when I was barely 20, and the pack needed a leader. Sometimes duty chooses us rather than the other way around." "Do you regret it?" The question escaped before she could stop it. Too personal, too intimate. But he'd answered anyway. "Some days. Most days, no. The pack is my family now. Their safety, their happiness." He'd met her eyes. "It matters more than my own wants." The weight of that statement settled between them, heavy with implications neither was ready to address. Thyra spent her mornings in the castle gardens when the weather permitted, walking the stone paths between beds of mountain roses and silver sage. The exercise helped with the restless energy that came with pregnancy, and the fresh air cleared her head of the complicated tangle of emotions that seemed to grow stronger each day. Her belly was beginning to show now, a small but definite swell that she found herself touching constantly, reassuring herself that Alara was real, was safe, was growing. She was examining a particularly beautiful cluster of moonflowers when she felt eyes on her back. Turning, she found a group of court ladies watching from the terrace, their expressions ranging from curious to hostile. One of them, a beautiful wolf with auburn hair and sharp green eyes, whispered something that made the others laugh. Heat flooded Thyra's cheeks. She knew what they saw: the trader's widow, the charity case, the pregnant outsider who'd somehow caught the Alpha King's attention. She'd heard the whispers in the corridors, the speculation about why Aiden would grant her sanctuary, what she might have offered in return. The mate bond was private, sacred. Aiden hadn't announced it, and Thyra understood why. A king couldn't simply claim a widow carrying another's child, not without consequences that would ripple through every pack alliance he'd carefully constructed. So they existed in this strange limbo, drawn together by forces beyond their control, but unable to acknowledge what thrummed between them. It was the auburn-haired woman who approached first, her steps measured and elegant, her smile sharp as broken glass. "You must be Thyra," she said, her voice carrying the cultured accent of old nobility. "I'm Marin, lady-in-waiting to the Dowager Queen. We've all been so curious about you." "Hello." Thyra fought the urge to flee, forcing herself to stand straight despite feeling utterly outmatched. "The gardens are beautiful, aren't they?" Aiden's mother planted most of these before she passed. Marin's eyes flickered to Thyra's stomach, quick and assessing. "Such a shame. What happened to your mate? These are dangerous times for wolves who challenge the established order." The barb landed precisely where intended. Gareth made his choices. I had no part in them. Of course not. But Marin's smile suggested she believed otherwise. Still, it must be difficult. Being here, dependent on the mercy of the Alpha who killed him. Carrying a child who'll grow up knowing her father died a traitor. "Marin." The voice came from behind them, cool and authoritative. "I believe the Dowager Queen is looking for you." Thyra turned to find an older woman approaching, silver threading through her blonde hair, her bearing speaking of status and power. The court ladies immediately dropped into respectful curtsies, Lady Helena, Marin murmured, though her eyes flashed with irritation. Run along now. Helena's tone made it clear it wasn't a suggestion. She waited until the group retreated before turning to Thyra with a warmer expression. Please forgive Marin. She's been trying to position herself as a potential match for Aiden for years. Your presence has upset her plans. I'm not. Thyra started, then stopped, unsure how to finish that sentence. I didn't come here to cause problems. No. You came here pregnant and desperate, which is infinitely more interesting. Helena's blue eyes sparkled with something that might have been amusement. I'm Helena Stormcrest, Aiden's aunt and advisor. May I walk with you? Too surprised to refuse, Thyra nodded. They strolled in silence for a moment, Helena pausing occasionally to deadhead a spent bloom or straighten a wayward vine. The older woman moved with the confidence of someone who belonged completely, who'd never questioned her place in the world. My nephew is more at peace than I've seen him in 5 years, Helena said finally, since before Lissa died. The name of Aiden's first mate hit Thyra like a physical blow. She'd known about her, of course, the beautiful, accomplished Alpha's daughter who'd been Aiden's true mate and queen, who'd died defending the kingdom's borders from rogues, taking a silver blade meant for a child. I'm sorry for your loss, Thyra managed. It devastated him. Helena's voice gentled. Lissa was his friend before she was his mate, his partner in every sense. When she died, something in Aiden died too. He threw himself into ruling, into being the perfect king. But the man disappeared. She looked at Thyra directly. Until you arrived. Now I see glimpses of him again, smiling, distracted, human. I don't know what you want me to say. Thyra's hands twisted together, anxiety spiking. The situation is complicated. The best things always are. Helena reached out, covering Thyra's restless hands with her own. I'm not here to pressure you, child. I simply wanted you to know that not everyone at court sees you as a problem. Some of us see you as a possibility. Before Thyra could respond, a commotion at the garden entrance drew their attention. Servants were rushing about, and through the archway came a procession that made Thyra's stomach drop. At its center walked a woman who could only be described as magnificent. Tall and statuesque, with midnight black hair cascading down her back and silver eyes that swept the garden with cool appraisal. She wore traveling leathers that somehow looked elegant, and she moved with the confident grace of an Alpha's daughter who'd never questioned her worth. Oh dear, Helena murmured. Lady Celeste arrived earlier than expected. Who? But Thyra already knew, had seen it in the way the woman's eyes immediately searched the garden, in the proprietary way she surveyed the castle grounds. Aiden's intended political match, Helena confirmed quietly. Daughter of Alpha Silas Nightshade, who controls the Eastern Territories. The betrothal has been discussed for years, though nothing's been formalized. This visit is meant to finalize negotiations. The world tilted slightly. Thyra had known, intellectually, that Aiden would need to make a political marriage. That mate bonds meant nothing against the practical realities of alliances and territory. But knowing and seeing were devastatingly different things. Lady Celeste's gaze swept the garden and landed on them. Her silver eyes narrowed fractionally, taking in Thyra's pregnant form with an assessment that missed nothing. Then she smiled, brilliant and cold, and changed direction toward them. I should go, Thyra whispered urgently. Stand your ground, Helena murmured back. You have every right to be here. Then Celeste was upon them, her smile never wavering. Lady Helena, how wonderful to see you again. Her voice was honey and steel. And you must be the guest everyone's been whispering about. Thyra Ashenblade. She forced herself to meet those silver eyes, despite every instinct screaming to submit to the more dominant wolf. Welcome to the Mountain Kingdom. How gracious of you to welcome me to Aiden's home. The emphasis was subtle but unmistakable. I hear you've had quite the journey. Fleeing your pack, crossing neutral territory while pregnant. How brave. The word brave somehow sounded like foolish in Celeste's mouth. The Alpha King granted me sanctuary, Thyra said, fighting to keep her voice level. So I heard. He always was soft-hearted about strays. Celeste's gaze flickered to Thyra's belly. And you're carrying Gareth Ironmaw's child, the traitor who attacked eastern settlements under my father's protection. How convenient that you've landed on your feet in his enemy's castle. That's enough, Celeste. Helena's voice carried warning. Of course, forgive me. But Celeste's smile sharpened. I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to get acquainted. I'll be staying for the month, working closely with Aiden on our future alliance. She leaned in slightly, her voice dropping just enough that only Thyra could hear. Whatever you think is happening here, whatever pretty dreams he sold you, remember that I'm the one who'll stand beside him when this is over. I'm the one his kingdom needs. Then she swept away, leaving Thyra trembling with a volatile mixture of fear, anger, and a jealousy so intense it stole her breath. Don't let her rattle you, Helena said gently. Celeste is used to getting what she wants. She's right, though. Thyra pressed a hand to her stomach, feeling Alara shift beneath her palm. She's what Aiden needs. A proper mate, a political alliance, someone who isn't carrying another Alpha's child. What Aiden needs, Helena said firmly, is what makes him whole. The rest is just politics. But politics, Thyra was learning, had a way of crushing what the heart wanted. The formal dinner that night was torture from the moment Thyra entered the Great Hall. She'd tried to decline, claiming exhaustion, but a note from Aiden had arrived requesting her presence. Not commanding, requesting, as if he needed her there. Now, seated at the long table with what felt like hundreds of eyes on her, Thyra desperately wished she'd stayed in her quarters. She'd been placed far from the head of the table, surrounded by minor nobles who either ignored her completely or asked pointed questions about her former pack. Meanwhile, Celeste sat at Aiden's right hand, the place of honor, her laughter carrying across the hall like bells. Thyra picked at her food, unable to stomach the rich venison and roasted vegetables despite her pregnancy hunger. Her dress, one of several the servants had left in her wardrobe, was fine by her standards, but looked shabby compared to Celeste's midnight blue gown that probably cost more than Thyra's entire former pack had in their treasury. More wine? The servant hovering at her elbow looked sympathetic. I can't. She touched her stomach ruefully. The baby. Of course, my lady. Some water, then. She wasn't a lady, but arguing felt like too much effort. Thyra accepted the goblet and sipped, her eyes drawn against her will to the head table. Aiden looked devastating in formal attire, his dark coat embroidered with silver thread that caught the candlelight. But it was the way Celeste leaned toward him, her hand resting casually on his arm as she spoke, that made something twist painfully in Thyra's chest. The mate bond stretched between them, thrumming with an awareness that felt both precious and pointless. What good was recognition when reality demanded something else entirely? Aiden's eyes found hers across the hall, amber gaze intense even at this distance. For a moment the noise and crowd faded, and there was only that connection, primal, undeniable, aching with everything they couldn't say. Then Celeste claimed his attention again, and the moment shattered. Thyra excused herself before dessert was served, unable to bear another moment of watching her mate play the role of almost betrothed to someone else. The corridors were blessedly empty as she hurried back toward her quarters, her heart hammering and tears threatening. Thyra, wait! She froze at Aiden's voice, rough and urgent behind her. Turning, she found him striding down the corridor, his formal composure cracking at the edges. You shouldn't have left, he said when he reached her. I was tired. The lie tasted bitter. You were hurting. His hand lifted as if to touch her, then fell. I saw it on your face. What do you want me to say? The words burst out before she could stop them. That watching you with her doesn't tear me apart? That this bond between us isn't the cruelest joke the moon goddess has ever played? You're going to marry her, Aiden. You have to. Your kingdom needs the alliance, and I— Her voice broke. I'm nobody. A widow carrying another's child. There's no scenario where this works. Thyra. No. She stepped back, needing distance before she did something stupid like reach for him. Lady Celeste is right. Whatever I thought might happen here, it can't. You need to focus on your kingdom, and I need to focus on keeping Alara safe. That's all that matters. She turned and fled before he could respond, before the devastation in his amber eyes could break her completely. Behind her, she heard him start to follow, then stop, letting her go. It was the right thing, the smart thing, the only thing that made sense. So why did it feel like her heart was being ripped from her chest? The scream tore from Thyra's throat before she was fully awake, primal terror flooding her system as rough hands clamped over her mouth. Darkness filled her room. Someone had extinguished her fire, and the shapes moving around her bed were wrong, their scents foreign and laced with violence. Assassins. Her wolf surged forward with desperate strength, giving her the power to twist against her attacker. She bit down hard on the hand covering her mouth, tasting copper, and the man cursed viciously. His grip loosened just enough for her to wrench free and roll off the far side of the bed. Grab her! The voice was harsh, unfamiliar. The child must not survive. Thyra's blood turned to ice. Her hands flew to her stomach protectively as she scrambled backward, searching desperately for anything she could use as a weapon. But these were trained killers, moving with coordinated precision, cutting off every avenue of escape. One lunged for her, a silver blade glinting in the moonlight. Thyra grabbed a candlestick from the side table and swung wildly, catching him across the temple. He staggered but didn't fall, and his companion was already moving to flank her. She was going to die. Her daughter was going to die. All of it. The desperate flight, Aiden's sanctuary, the impossible hope, had been for nothing. The door exploded inward with a crash that shook the stone walls. Aiden filled the doorway, his eyes blazing amber in the darkness, power radiating from him in waves that made the air crackle. He took in the scene in a single glance. Thyra cornered, the assassins between them, the silver blade inches from her pregnant belly. The sound that tore from his throat was barely human. He moved like lightning, like vengeance given form. The first assassin died before he could turn, Aiden's claws ripping through his throat with surgical precision. The second managed to raise his blade before Aiden's fist caved in his chest, the sickening crack of breaking ribs echoing through the room. The third, the one who'd grabbed Thyra, made the mistake of trying to use her as a shield. He yanked her against him, silver blade pressed to her throat, and snarled, "Stay back, or she dies." Aiden froze, but the rage in his eyes promised death. Let her go. The child of the bloodline must be eliminated, the assassin hissed. Alpha Mordecai sends his regards. He never finished the sentence. Aiden launched himself forward with impossible speed, his hand catching the assassin's wrist and twisting with a snap that made Thyra's stomach turn. The blade clattered away, and then Aiden was between them, his body a shield as he drove his claws into the man's heart. The assassin fell, and silence crashed over the room like a wave. Thyra stood there, shaking violently, her hands still pressed protectively over her belly. Blood spattered the walls, the floor, her nightgown. The iron scent of it filled her lungs, making her want to retch. Thyra. Aiden's voice cut through the shock, gentle despite the death he'd just dealt. He crossed to her in 2 strides, his bloodied hands hovering near her shoulders but not quite touching. Thyra, look at me. Are you hurt? Did they? I'm fine. The words came out thin, breathless. We're fine. They didn't? You got here in time. Something in Aiden's expression cracked. He pulled her against his chest, heedless of the blood coating them both, and Thyra felt him shaking as badly as she was. His arms wrapped around her with devastating care, cradling her pregnant form as if she were made of spun glass. I felt it, he whispered against her hair. Through the bond. Your terror. I was halfway across the castle and I felt it like a knife to the heart. His arms tightened fractionally. If I'd been even a minute slower. But you weren't. Thyra pressed closer, needing his strength, his warmth, the solid reality of him alive and whole. You saved us! The door burst open again, revealing guards with weapons drawn, their faces grim. Aiden's beta, Marcus, Thyra had learned, took in the carnage with a single sweep of his eyes. Secure the room, he barked to the guards. I want every inch of the castle searched. Find out how they got in and if there are more. His gaze settled on the bodies, lingering on the one Aiden had killed last. Alpha Mordecai's mark. This was coordinated. War room. Now. Aiden's voice carried the weight of absolute command. And send for the healer to check Thyra and the baby. I'm fine, Thyra protested, but Aiden was already guiding her toward the door, his hand never leaving the small of her back. You're going to be checked anyway, he said, brooking no argument. His eyes met hers, and she saw the fear beneath his controlled exterior. Please, I need to know you're both truly safe. How could she argue with that? The healer, a kind-faced older woman named Marta, examined Thyra in a side chamber while the war council convened in the adjacent room. Through the thick wooden door, Thyra could hear raised voices, though she couldn't make out the words. The argument sounded heated. The baby's heartbeat is strong, Marta announced, her hands glowing faintly with healing magic as she pressed them to Thyra's stomach. No damage, no distress. You were very lucky. Aiden was very fast, Thyra corrected quietly. Marta's expression softened. That he was. I've never seen him move like that, like a wolf possessed. The mate bond must have amplified his awareness of your danger. She pulled her hands back, the glow fading. You should rest, but I know you won't. Not until you know what they're planning in there. She was right. Thyra's every instinct screamed to know what was happening, to understand the threat that had come for her daughter. Marta helped her into a clean robe. Someone had brought clothes while she was being examined, and then slipped out, leaving Thyra alone with her racing thoughts. The attack had been coordinated, professional, and they'd specifically mentioned the bloodline, proving the elder's prophecy was more than mystical ravings. Someone powerful wanted Alara dead before she was even born. Alpha Mordecai. The name meant nothing to Thyra, but clearly he was a threat significant enough to send assassins into Aiden's castle. The war room door opened, and Marcus appeared. The Alpha King requests your presence. Thyra's heart hammered as she followed him into the room. It was circular, with a massive table at its center covered in maps and markers. A dozen wolves stood around it, advisors, military commanders, nobles whose names she didn't know. All of them turned to stare when she entered, their expressions ranging from sympathetic to hostile. Aiden stood at the head of the table, and the moment their eyes met, some of the tension drained from his massive frame. You're all right? The baby? We're fine. Thyra moved toward him instinctively, drawn by the bond and her own need for reassurance. What's happening? Alpha Mordecai has declared war, one of the nobles said bluntly. The assassination attempt was merely the opening salvo, not war. Aiden's jaw clenched. A demand. He wants Thyra surrendered to face trial for her mate's crimes. If we refuse, he'll unite the Eastern Pax against us. Ice flooded Thyra's veins. Then give me to him. I won't let innocent wolves die because... No. The word cracked like a whip, Aiden's power flooding the room and making everyone take an involuntary step back. That is not an option. Ever. Sire, you must consider... Another advisor began. I said no. Aiden's eyes blazed amber, his alpha presence overwhelming. Thyra and her child are under my personal protection. Anyone who suggests otherwise can leave this council right now. Silence fell, heavy and fraught. Thyra watched the advisors exchange glances, saw the political calculations happening behind their eyes. This was a line in the sand, a declaration that meant more than simple sanctuary. Marcus cleared his throat. If I may, sire, Mordecai's true goal isn't justice. He wants the child dead because of the prophecy. Whatever bloodline the baby carries threatens his power somehow. So we protect the bloodline, Aiden said firmly. We figure out what makes it special and use that knowledge to secure our position. Or we eliminate the threat before it costs us everything. The voice came from the back of the room, cold and cutting. Lady Celeste stepped from the shadows, her silver gown somehow pristine despite the late hour and chaos. She moved to the table with elegant confidence, her gaze dismissive as it swept over Thyra. Mordecai is offering an alliance, Celeste continued, placing her palms flat on the table. My father received the proposal this evening. If you hand over the traitor's widow, he'll back down from war and instead join our Eastern coalition. That's 3 major pacts unified under your leadership, Aiden. It's everything we've been working toward, at the cost of an innocent woman and her unborn child. Aiden's voice was dangerously quiet, at the cost of 1 woman versus hundreds, maybe thousands, of wolves who'll die in the war. Celeste's eyes were hard. I understand the mate bond makes this difficult, but you're a king first. You have to make the hard choices. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Thyra's heart stuttered. Celeste knew about the bond? The mate bond is sacred, Marcus said sharply, asking the Alpha King to surrender his true mate. His true mate is dead, Celeste interrupted coldly. This is a secondary bond at best, and hardly worth destroying a kingdom over. Especially when she's carrying another Alpha's child. Aiden moved so fast Thyra barely saw it. One moment he was across the table, the next he was inches from Celeste, his power making the air shimmer. Get out. Aiden, out. Now. Before I forget you're a guest under my roof. Celeste stared at him for a long moment, something calculating behind her silver eyes. Then she smiled, sharp, knowing, dangerous. Very well. But when the bodies start piling up, remember you were given a choice. Her gaze flickered to Thyra. I hope you're worth it. She swept from the room, leaving chaos in her wake. The advisors burst into overlapping arguments, some defending Aiden's position, others clearly swayed by Celeste's ruthless logic. Thyra stood frozen, drowning in guilt and fear, and the terrible weight of knowing Celeste was right about one thing. How many wolves would die because Aiden refused to give her up? Enough. Aiden's voice silenced them all. This is my decision, and it's final. Thyra remains under my protection. We will not surrender to Mordecai's threats. Instead, he turned to Marcus. Send word to all our allies. Call in every favor, every oath. I want a show of force that makes Mordecai think twice about attacking. And if he attacks anyway? An advisor asked quietly. Aiden's smile was all teeth. Then we remind him why they call me the Alpha King. The meeting dissolved after that, advisors hurrying off to carry out orders, warriors preparing for potential conflict. Thyra stood there, numb with the enormity of what was unfolding. All of this, the attack, the threats, the political maneuvering, because of her, because of Alara. Come with me. Aiden's hand settled on her lower back, warm and grounding. You shouldn't be alone tonight. She let him guide her through the corridors, too overwhelmed to protest. They ended up in what she realized was his personal study, a room lined with books and maps, with a fire crackling in the hearth and windows overlooking the moonlit mountains. Private. Safe. His. The moment the door closed, Aiden pulled her into his arms again, his face buried in her hair. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry you're in danger because of me. Because of you? Thyra pulled back to stare at him. Aiden, this is my burden, my past catching up. You've done nothing but protect me. I made you a target by keeping you here. Celeste is right about that much. If I'd sent you away to some remote sanctuary where no one knew who you were, they would have found me eventually. The prophecy, whatever Alara represents, it's bigger than where I hide. Thyra's hands fisted in his shirt, holding tight. And I don't want to be away from you, even if it's safer, even if it makes sense. I can't. Aiden's eyes searched hers, amber depths burning with everything they hadn't said. The bond. The bond, she agreed, but also you. Who you are. How you make me feel protected and seen and… Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. Wanted. Not for politics or bloodlines or alliances, but just… me. Thyra. Her name was a prayer and a curse on his lips. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. I publicly declared you under my protection tonight. Do you understand what that means? That you're sheltering a refugee? That you're mine? The words rumbled through her like thunder. In wolf society, that's as good as a claiming. I basically announced to every pack that you're my mate. Her breath caught. But Celeste can go back to her father and tell him the Eastern Alliance will have to be built on something other than a political mating. Aiden's jaw set. I won't mate someone I don't want, not even for the kingdom. You wanted her before I came. It hurt to say, but it needed to be acknowledged. I was willing to consider her, he corrected, because my advisors said it made sense, and because I never expected to feel the mate bond again after Lissa. His other hand settled on her hip, anchoring her close. Then you collapsed at my border, looked at me with those storm-gray eyes, and everything I thought I knew shattered. You're my mate, Thyra. My true mate. That's not politics or convenience. It's fate. Fate gave you to Lissa first. The name of his dead mate tasted like ash. You're not second best, Aiden said fiercely. You're not a replacement. The moon goddess can grant more than one mate bond in a lifetime. It's rare, but it happens. Usually when she has plans bigger than we can see. His hand slid from her hip to settle gently on her pregnant belly. Like a child who'll reshape the wolf kingdoms. Like two bloodlines that need to unite. Thyra's hands covered his, her daughter shifting beneath their joined touch. What if Celeste is right? What if the cost is too high? Then we pay it together. He leaned down, pressing his forehead to hers. I'm not giving you up, Thyra. Not to Mordecai, not for peace, not for any reason. You and Alara, you're mine to protect now. That's a vow that matters more than crowns or kingdoms. The certainty in his voice broke something open in her chest. All the fear, the guilt, the desperate hope she'd been holding back crashed through her like a flood. Her hands fisted in his shirt, and she pulled him down, closing the last inches between them and pressing her lips to his. The mate bond exploded into life, singing through her blood with a rightness that stole her breath. Aiden made a sound low in his throat, surprise and need and recognition, before his arms banded around her and he took control of the kiss. It was nothing like the chaste press of lips she'd shared with Gareth, nothing like any kiss she'd imagined. This was claiming and surrender at once, fierce and tender, flavored with everything they hadn't said, and promises they were finally ready to make. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Aiden's eyes had gone pure amber, his wolf right at the surface, demanding, possessive. Stay with me tonight, he said, his voice rough. I'm not asking for that, not while you're pregnant with another's child. But stay. Let me hold you. Let me keep you safe. Thyra knew she should refuse, knew that sharing his bed, even innocently, would only deepen the bond and make the inevitable complications more painful. But she was so tired of being sensible, of protecting herself from hope. Yes, she whispered. Yes. He led her to his private chambers, and Thyra's breath caught at the intimacy of it, his space, marked with his scent, filled with books and weapons, and the evidence of the man behind the crown. Aiden built up the fire while she perched on the edge of his massive bed, suddenly nervous despite her agreement. Here. He handed her one of his shirts, soft and worn. You'll be more comfortable. She changed in his bathing room, emerging to find him already in bed, the covers pulled back in invitation. He'd stripped to loose sleep pants, and the sight of his muscled torso made her mouth go dry. This was the body that had killed 3 assassins with brutal efficiency, the strength that had saved her and Alara. Thyra climbed into bed, and Aiden immediately pulled her against his chest, arranging them so her back pressed to his front and his arm draped protectively over her belly. Sleep, he murmured against her hair. I've got you. Nothing's getting through me to hurt either of you. Surrounded by his warmth, his strength, his scent, Thyra felt the terror of the night finally ease. Her daughter shifted beneath Aiden's hand, and he made a soft sound of wonder. She's active tonight, Thyra said, probably scared by all the excitement. His thumb stroked gentle circles on her stomach. You're safe now, little one. I promise. Thyra closed her eyes, a wave of emotion crashing over her so intense it ached. This man, this powerful, dangerous, impossibly gentle man, was claiming not just her, but the child she carried, offering them both protection, acceptance, a future she'd never dared imagine. She was falling in love with him. Had probably been falling since that first moment in the border station, when their eyes met and the world shifted. But love was a luxury neither of them could afford yet. Not with war looming, not with assassins in the shadows, not with a prophecy hanging over her daughter's head and enemies circling like wolves scenting blood. Still, for tonight, she let herself have this. The warmth of his arms, the steady beat of his heart against her back, the impossible hope that maybe, just maybe, they could survive what was coming. Together. The separation was killing him. Aiden stood at the edge of the neutral meeting ground, watching Mordecai's forces assemble across the clearing, and felt nothing but the gnawing ache where Thyra should be. 3 days since he'd sent her away. 3 days of feeling like his chest had been carved open and his heart ripped out. It had seemed so logical at the time. Mordecai had demanded this meeting, threatened war if Aiden didn't attend personally. The sanctuary was hidden, protected by ancient wards that even Mordecai's trackers couldn't penetrate. Thyra and the baby would be safe while he handled the political nightmare his mate bond had created. Except nothing felt safe. Nothing felt right. The bond stretched between them like a rope pulled too tight, and with every hour that passed, Aiden felt it fraying. The eastern packs are holding position, Marcus murmured beside him, eyes scanning the tree line. No sign of movement beyond Mordecai's guard. Aiden barely heard him. His wolf was a caged beast inside his mind, snarling and clawing to break free, to run back to their mate. Wrong, it howled. She needs us. Go back. Go back now. Sire? Marcus's voice sharpened with concern. Are you... The bond exploded with agony. Aiden staggered, his hand flying to his chest as Thyra's pain lanced through him like silver through flesh. Terror flooded the connection, her fear so visceral he could taste it, and underneath... The baby. Something was wrong with the baby. I have to go. The words came out strangled. Aiden was already turning, already moving, his wolf taking over before his human mind could fully process. She's in labor. There are complications. You can't leave. One of his advisors grabbed his arm, desperate. Mordecai will see it as weakness, will use it to... Aiden's snarl silenced him instantly. My mate is dying. Nothing else matters. He shifted mid-stride, his wolf form exploding into being with a violence that made the warriors around him scatter. Massive and silver-touched, his alpha power radiating in waves, Aiden launched himself toward the mountains without looking back. Behind him, he heard Marcus shouting orders, heard the political meeting dissolving into chaos. Mordecai would capitalize on this, would use Aiden's abandonment as proof of instability, of a king too controlled by base instinct to rule effectively. Let him. Let them all think what they wanted. Thyra needed him, and he would tear through hell itself to reach her. The mountain pass was treacherous, all loose scree and sharp drops, but Aiden ran it at full speed. The bond pulled him forward like a compass, Thyra's pain a constant pulse against his consciousness. He could feel her fighting, feel the exhaustion dragging at her, feel the life inside her struggling. "Hold on," he sent down the bond, praying she could feel him coming. "Hold on, I'm coming." The first of Mordecai's warriors appeared when Aiden was halfway through the pass. 3 of them, positioned to block the narrow trail, their eyes gleaming with predatory intent. "The Alpha King abandons his meeting," one called out, shifting to wolf form. How convenient for Alpha Mordecai's plans. Aiden didn't slow. He hit them like an avalanche, all teeth and claws and rage amplified by desperate fear. The first wolf went down with his throat torn out before he could react. The second managed to rake claws across Aiden's shoulder, but the pain was nothing compared to the agony pulsing through the bond. Aiden caught him by the scruff and slammed him into the rock face hard enough to crack stone. The third ran. Smart. Blood streaked Aiden's silver fur, some his own, most not. He didn't stop, couldn't stop, even as more warriors appeared to block his path. Mordecai had planned this, he realized with cold fury. Had orchestrated the meeting knowing Thyra was close to her time, knowing Aiden would break if his mate was threatened. It didn't matter. The warriors could slow him, but nothing would stop him. He fought through 5 more, then 8, leaving bodies and blood in his wake. His power blazed like the sun, alpha dominance overwhelming even the most skilled fighters. They tried to coordinate, tried to use the narrow terrain to their advantage, but Aiden was beyond strategy now. He was pure instinct, pure need, a force of nature with a single purpose: Thyra. The bond pulsed with fresh agony, and Aiden felt her scream echo through his soul. His vision went red. He tore through the last line of Mordecai's warriors with brutal efficiency, his jaws crushing windpipes, his claws opening bellies. They fell like wheat before a scythe, and Aiden didn't spare them a second glance. The sanctuary appeared through the trees, small and ancient, its wards shimmering like heat haze. Aiden shifted as he ran, his human form hitting the door with enough force to splinter wood. The wards recognized him, barely, his control so fractured they nearly rejected him, and let him through. Inside, he heard it. Thyra's scream, raw and desperate. He burst into the birthing room covered in blood and mountain dust, his eyes wild, and found her. Thyra lay on the bed, her face contorted with pain, the healer between her legs speaking urgently. "Have to push now, the baby's in distress." "Aiden!" Thyra's voice broke on his name, tears streaming down her face. "You came. You. Always." He was at her side in an instant, his bloodied hands finding hers, uncaring of how he must look. "I'm here. I've got you." The healer's eyes widened at his appearance, but she recovered quickly. "Alpha King, thank the goddess. The baby's turned wrong. We need to push now or we'll lose them both." Terror unlike anything Aiden had known gripped his heart. "Tell me what to do. Hold her. Give her strength. The rest is up to her." Aiden gathered Thyra against his chest, his arms supporting her weight, and felt their bond snap fully into place. His strength flooded through the connection, his wolf's power lending itself to her human form, and Thyra gasped at the influx of energy. Together he whispered against her ear, "You're not alone. I'm right here." She pushed, and Aiden felt every moment of her agony as if it were his own. He held her through it, murmuring encouragement, lending her everything he had. Minutes stretched into eternity, Thyra's screams echoing off stone walls, the healer's urgent instructions a counterpoint to the thunder of Aiden's heart. Then, a different cry, high and thin and furious. "She's here!" The healer lifted a tiny, perfect form, all wrinkled skin and flailing limbs. A daughter, healthy and whole. Aiden felt the exact moment their bond completed, clicking into place with a finality that stole his breath. The mate bond he'd shared with Lissa had been powerful, beautiful. But this was different. This wasn't just recognition, but choice. Not just fate, but decision. He'd chosen Thyra. had fought through an army to reach her, had claimed not just her, but the child she carried. And looking at the baby the healer was cleaning, at the daughter that wasn't his blood, but was absolutely his in every way that mattered, Aiden felt his world reshape itself around this moment. "Let me see her," Thyra whispered, exhausted but alive, so beautifully alive. The healer placed the baby on Thyra's chest, and Aiden watched his mate's face transform with wonder. Tiny fingers curled against Thyra's skin, and the baby, Alara, he remembered, quieted at her mother's touch. "She's perfect," Thyra breathed. "Aiden, she's perfect," he agreed, his voice rough with emotion. His hand settled over both of them, large and scarred and gentle. "You're both perfect." Alara's eyes opened, unfocused but seeking, and Aiden felt something shift in his chest. This was his daughter now, his to protect, his to raise, his to love. The bloodline didn't matter. The prophecy didn't matter. Only this fragile, precious life they'd fought so hard to protect. "We need to get word to the castle," the healer said quietly, giving them a moment before returning to practicality. "And you need treating, Alpha King. Those wounds, later." Aiden didn't take his eyes off Thyra and Alara. Nothing matters but them right now. The healer wisely didn't argue. 3 hours later, a messenger burst through the sanctuary doors, his face pale with fear. "Alpha King! The castle is under attack. Mordecai's forces, they've taken the Great Hall. There are hostages." Aiden's blood turned to ice. Of course. The meeting had been a distraction, his journey here the bait. Mordecai had used Aiden's mate bond against him, drawing him away so the castle would be vulnerable. "How many?" Marcus's voice came from behind the messenger, the beta having followed Aiden's trail with their remaining forces. "At least 50 warriors. They're demanding the Alpha King's surrender." Demanding... The messenger's eyes flickered to Alara. The child. Thyra's arms tightened around their daughter, her face going pale. She'd been dozing, still recovering, but exhaustion fled at the threat. "No, absolutely not. I'll handle it." Aiden stood, his mind already calculating distances, forces, strategies. "Marcus, take half the guard and I'm coming with you." Thyra swung her legs off the bed, moving carefully but with determination. "No." The word came out harder than he'd intended. "You just gave birth. You need to recover, and Alara needs both her parents alive." Thyra met his eyes with steel in her storm-gray gaze. "And your people need their queen. I'm not hiding here while you face this alone." "Thyra, you can't—" Something flickered across Alara's tiny form, a shimmer of golden light that made everyone in the room freeze. The baby cooed softly, and the light expanded, washing over Thyra like warm honey. Thyra gasped, her wounds from childbirth visibly closed, the exhaustion bleeding from her face as if she'd slept for days. The golden light pulsed once more, then faded, leaving Alara sleeping peacefully in her mother's arms. "What?" The healer stared, eyes wide. "That's not possible. That kind of power." "The prophecy," Aiden breathed. "The bloodline. It's awakening." Thyra looked down at their daughter with wonder and fear. "She healed me. How is she? She's only hours old." "The ancient bloodlines carried gifts," Marcus said quietly. "Gifts that manifested in times of great need. If Alara can channel power like that, then Mordecai will never stop hunting her." Thyra's expression hardened with fierce protectiveness. "Which is why we end this now, together." Aiden wanted to argue, wanted to lock her and Alara away somewhere safe where nothing could touch them. But he saw the determination in Thyra's eyes, the set of her jaw, and recognized it for what it was. She wasn't the frightened widow who'd collapsed at his border anymore. She was a mother protecting her child, and nothing was more dangerous than that. "The journey back is rough," he warned. "If you're still weak, I'm not. Thyra stood, testing her weight, and he watched in amazement as she moved with perfect balance. Whatever Alara did, I'm stronger than I was before I gave birth. She paused, a strange expression crossing her face. I can feel something. Inside me. Like a door opening to a room I never knew existed. The healer stepped forward, examining Thyra with hands that glowed faintly with diagnostic magic. Moon Goddess, protect us, she whispered. Your dormant bloodline. It's active. Alara's power awakened yours when she healed you. What does that mean? Aiden demanded. It means Thyra carries gifts of her own now. The healer pulled back, her expression awed. I can sense it. Healing magic, shielding capabilities. The ancient bloodlines protected their packs, sustained them through battles. If you have even a fraction of that power, then we have a chance, Thyra finished. She looked at Aiden, her eyes blazing with new purpose. Let me fight beside you. Let me protect our people. Our people. The words settled into Aiden's chest, like stones finding their place in a foundation. She was already thinking like a queen, already claiming his pack as hers. We leave in an hour, he decided. Thyra, you carry Alara. Marcus, organize the warriors into defensive formations. If Mordecai wants a battle, we'll give him one he'll never forget. The journey back through the mountain pass was nothing like Aiden's desperate run to reach Thyra. They moved as a unit, 20 warriors surrounding their Alpha King and his new family, weapons ready for any threat. But no more of Mordecai's forces appeared. Either they'd fallen back to the castle, or they were dead along the trail Aiden had carved earlier. Thyra rode beside him, Alara strapped to her chest in a sling the healer had fashioned. The baby slept through most of the journey, occasionally making small sounds that went straight to Aiden's heart. His daughter, his mate, his family, everything that mattered, vulnerable and within reach. They were an hour from the castle when Thyra gasped, her hand flying to her temple. What is it? Aiden was off his horse and at her side in an instant. I felt, there are wolves in pain. At the castle. I can sense them somehow. Thyra's eyes were unfocused, seeing something he couldn't. The hostages. They're terrified but alive, and there's something else, something... Her expression shifted to determination. I can reach them. I don't know how I know that, but I can. Marcus exchanged a glance with Aiden. The bloodline gifts. If she can sense the pack's distress, then she's already connecting to them. Aiden's hand found Thyra's, steadying her. Don't push it. We don't know the limits of this power yet. The limit is whatever it takes to save our people. Thyra's jaw set stubbornly. I'm tired of being protected, Aiden. Let me be the protector for once. Looking at her, fierce and determined, her storm-gray eyes blazing with purpose, their daughter sleeping peacefully against her chest, Aiden felt his wolf surge with pride. This was his mate, not fragile or helpless, but strong in ways he was only beginning to understand. Together, he said firmly. We protect them together. They crested the final ridge as the sun began its descent, painting the castle in shades of amber and blood. Smoke rose from the courtyard, and even from this distance, Aiden could see Mordecai's forces positioned around the great hall. 50 warriors, Marcus confirmed, his enhanced vision picking out details. All trained fighters. And Mordecai himself is in the hall with the hostages. How many hostages? Thyra asked, her voice tight. At least 30, servants, nobles, some of the younger guards who are off duty. Marcus's expression darkened. He's using them as shields, knowing you won't risk their lives. He doesn't know about Thyra's gifts. Aiden's mind raced through strategies, possibilities. That's our advantage. He'll expect me to negotiate, to try for a peaceful resolution. And instead, we show him exactly what happens when someone threatens our family. Aiden turned to Thyra, his expression serious. Can you shield the hostages? If I give you an opening to reach them. Thyra closed her eyes, her expression concentrating. Golden light flickered around her hands, faint but growing stronger. I think so. I can feel how to do it. Like the knowledge was always there, just sleeping. Then here's what we do. They approached the castle as the sun touched the horizon, Aiden walking openly toward the main gates with Thyra at his side. Marcus and the warriors spread out in a carefully orchestrated formation, hidden but ready. Mordecai's guards tensed as they approached, weapons rising. One called out, "That's close enough, Alpha King. Lord Mordecai demands you enter alone and unarmed." "I'm neither alone nor unarmed," Aiden called back, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "And I'm done with Mordecai's demands." The great hall doors opened, and Mordecai himself appeared. He was older than Aiden, his dark hair shot through with silver, his build massive even by Alpha standards. Power radiated from him, not as strong as Aiden's, but substantial enough to command an army. Behind him, Aiden could see the hostages, huddled in the center of the hall, surrounded by warriors with weapons drawn. Helena was among them, her face defiant even in captivity, and several of the servants Thyra had befriended. "Alpha King." Mordecai's smile was cold as winter. "I'm disappointed you abandoned our meeting. We had such important matters to discuss. You attacked my castle, took hostages. There's nothing left to discuss." Aiden's power flared, making the air shimmer. "Release them now, and I'll consider letting you live." Bold words from an alpha who's been compromised by his mate bond. Mordecai's gaze shifted to Thyra, lingering on the bundle at her chest. "And I see the child survived. How unfortunate." Thyra's arms tightened around Alara, and Aiden felt rage burn through their bond. "You want my daughter," Thyra said, her voice steady despite the fury underneath. "You want the bloodline's power for yourself. Want is such a simple word." Mordecai descended the steps, his warriors moving with him. "I need the child. The prophecy speaks of power enough to unite the kingdoms, or to conquer them. Under my control, that child could make me unstoppable." "She's not a weapon." Aiden's words came out as a growl. "She's an innocent baby. She's a tool. And you're a fool for thinking you can protect her." Mordecai gestured, and his warriors tightened formation around the hostages. "Here's my offer, Alpha King. Give me the child and I let everyone in that hall live. Refuse, and I start killing them one by one until you change your mind. No deal." Aiden's response was immediate. "Then watch your people die." Golden light exploded from Thyra's hands. It shot across the courtyard like lightning, surrounding the hostages in a shimmering barrier before Mordecai's warriors could react. Screams of surprise echoed as the shield solidified, protecting the vulnerable wolves from the weapons suddenly turned on them. "Now!" Aiden roared. Marcus and the warriors emerged from cover, hitting Mordecai's forces from three sides. The courtyard erupted into chaos, the clash of steel and snarls of wolves filling the air. But Aiden only had eyes for Mordecai, whose expression had shifted from smug confidence to rage. "You dare! I dare everything for them!" Aiden shifted mid-stride, his massive wolf form charging forward. "And you're going to learn exactly what that means." They collided with the force of avalanches, two alphas locked in mortal combat. Mordecai was strong, experienced, his claws finding purchase in Aiden's fur. But Aiden fought with the strength of a completed mate bond, with the fury of a father protecting his child, with power amplified by the certainty that he would not lose. Around them, the battle raged. Aiden's warriors pushed back Mordecai's forces, fighting with the coordination of wolves defending their home. And at the center of it all, Thyra stood with golden light blazing from her hands, maintaining the shields around the hostages while simultaneously healing fallen warriors on their side. The ancient bloodline's power flowed through her like a river finally finding its course. She could feel each wolf in her protection, could sense their pain and fear and desperate need. Her magic responded, shields strengthening where attacks focused, healing energy flowing to the wounded, her consciousness splitting across dozens of points of need simultaneously. "This is what I was meant for," she realized with stunning clarity. "Not to hide and be protected, but to protect others." Aiden's snarl brought her attention back to his fight with Mordecai. The two alphas were evenly matched, circling and striking, both bloodied but neither backing down. She could feel Aiden's exhaustion through their bond. He'd already fought through half an army to reach her, had barely rested before this battle. Thyra made a decision. She reached down the mate bond, letting her healing energy flow into Aiden. His injuries closed, his stamina renewed, and she felt his surprise ripple back through the connection. Together, she sent to him, "We're stronger together." Aiden's answering surge of love and gratitude nearly staggered her. Then he turned that renewed strength on Mordecai, his attacks coming faster, harder, overwhelming. Mordecai must have sensed the shift because his eyes found Thyra across the courtyard. Understanding and fury dawned on his face. "You've awakened the bloodline's power. That child did more than just manifest. She transformed you." "My daughter saved me," Thyra said, her voice carrying across the battle. "Because that's what the prophecy really means. Not destruction or conquest. Unity. Her existence completed the mate bond between bloodlines, creating something stronger than either alone." "Then I'll kill all three of you." Mordecai lunged for Thyra, his speed impossible, his intention lethal. He never reached her. Aiden intercepted him mid-leap, his jaws closing around Mordecai's throat with brutal finality. They crashed to the ground together, and for a moment, everything froze. The battle, the shields, the entire courtyard held its breath. Then Aiden's jaws tightened, and Mordecai went limp. The Alpha King stood over his enemy's body, bloodied and triumphant, and released a howl that echoed off the mountain peaks. His warriors took up the cry, a chorus of victory that sent Mordecai's remaining forces scrambling to flee. It was over. Aiden shifted back to human form, accepting a cloak from Marcus, and crossed to where Thyra stood. The golden shields were fading now, the hostages emerging shaken but whole, and Thyra was swaying on her feet, exhausted from maintaining so much magic. "I've got you," Aiden murmured, catching her before she fell. His arms came around her and Alara both, holding them close. "You were magnificent. Absolutely magnificent." "We won," Thyra whispered, leaning into his strength. "The prophecy. We proved what it really meant. You proved it." He kissed her forehead, then carefully pulled back the sling to check on their daughter. Alara was awake, her eyes wide and curious, seemingly unbothered by the battle that had raged around her. "Both my girls, stronger than anyone expected." Helena approached, her expression warm despite the ordeal. "My king, my queen, the hostages are safe thanks to your quick action. And I believe the entire realm just witnessed something unprecedented, a mate bond powerful enough to turn the tide of battle." "Not just the bond," Thyra said softly, looking up at Aiden. "The choice. We chose each other, chose to stand together, chose to fight for what matters. That's what made us unstoppable." Aiden cupped her face gently, his amber eyes blazing with emotion. "I would choose you in every lifetime, in every version of this story. You and Alara. You're my whole world. And you're ours." Thyra rose on her toes, pressing a kiss to his bloodied lips. Around them the pack began to gather, witnesses to this moment, to the birth of a new era. The prophecy had spoken of a child who would reshape kingdoms. But standing there in the aftermath of battle, Thyra understood the deeper truth. Alara hadn't reshaped anything, she'd simply revealed what was already there: the power of choice, the strength of unity, the truth that love, when given freely and fought for fiercely, could conquer anything, even destiny itself.